You're about to learn the 3 components of every freelance business and what to do about common bottlenecks within each. Hey, this is Zach from W Freelancing. I've noticed that most freelancers who feel stuck or stalled hit a bottleneck in one of these 3 big business areas. So I'm going to first dive into the model of what the areas are, and then we'll talk about the bottlenecks that come up in each and how you can navigate them. If you're wanting to grow your freelance business, grow your income, hit 6 figures, mid 6 figures, or even scale a 7-figure agency, you will want to pay attention to these bottlenecks. So let's dive in. So the model I think about all the time in my day-to-day with DYF, in my day-to-day with my freelance business, is this idea that every business needs 3 things. It needs many more things, but it definitely needs these 3 big areas, which is the offer and fulfillment. So in the case of DYF, it's like the courses we sell, the coaching we sell, whatever. In my freelance business, it's the services I do for clients. So in your case, as a freelancer, your services. It needs leads, which is people to sell things to. And it needs sales, which is the process of selling things. So offer and fulfillment or product, leads, sales. Every business needs these 3 things, and most bottlenecks that get in the way of your growth are going to fall into one of these 3 categories. The biggest sort of misguided thing that I see with freelance businesses is that freelance businesses are kind of like, they're somewhere in between a job and a business. Because with a business like DYF, for example, I've made the course, so now when the course is sold, I don't do anything for it. You just buy it, you take it, cool. That's an advantage for me because it means that the fulfillment aspect is easier. I don't really have to do anything to fulfill it. But it's disadvantageous because creating a course takes a really, really long time. One of the things that's, in my opinion, the coolest thing about a freelance business or agency that a lot of people miss the opportunity of is the fact that you can, like, quote, roll out a new product in like an hour. Rolling out a product in a freelance business is really just conceptualizing an offer. That's all you actually need, because there's no expectation from your clients that you are going to instantly give them the thing when they pay you. If you bought a course from me and I was like, hey, cool, thanks for your money, I'll get you that course in the next few months. I don't think you'd be too happy about it, But the expectation with freelancing is that you pay, you get your stuff later. So in the case of freelancing, having an actual quote product is so easy because you only need to conceptualize it. But oftentimes the actual offer, the conceptualized thing you get when you pay, is weak. But I digress. That's not what this video is about. Let's talk about the bottlenecks at each stage. So leads. In the lead stage, I noticed that the biggest bottlenecks I see for freelancers come down to number 1, controllable lead flow, and number 2, viable lead generation for the price. So controllable basically means you need to, number 1, know your numbers, and number 2, have something you can do to get leads. Most of us, past Zach included, kind of just coast and rely on word of mouth. This is fine if it's working okay and you never ever want more leads than you always get, but it becomes a problem if you ever want to get a new client and feel like you have nothing you can actually do to do that. So finding some strategy that's controllable is the way you solve this. It doesn't have to be crazy, like cold outreach, Upwork, anything where you can find a person to talk to and say things to them is controllable. Where people get into trouble is viability. Let's say that you send a bajillion cold outreach and you don't get any responses. Sure, you were able to control it, but you didn't actually get results. It wasn't viable. And this is where the earlier points about the offer kind of come into play. If you have a weak offer, you're going to find that, again, these 3 quadrants, leads, fulfillment, sales. If you have a weak offer, which is to say it's not very appealing, you say, I'm going to charge you $10,000 for blank, and blank doesn't sound worth $10,000, you're going to find that lead generation is harder and sales is harder, and you might not actually be able to get a controllable lead gen strategy that's also viable. And what I mean when I say viable is, imagine you had this thing dialed in and working with you doing it. Could you remove yourself and delegate it to somebody else and have it not cost an insane amount of money? And insane, the definition varies. For a lot of businesses, paying $1,000 to get a client could be a pretty dang good deal. I think that one of past Zach's challenges is expecting that clients should come for free. Real businesses pay to get customers. They don't just get customers for free. So if you're thinking that every customer should be basically for free or every client should be basically for free, that's probably a reframe to look at. But that kind of leads us into the next one, which is fulfillment. If you own a job and you're not running a business, it's kind of hard to pay $1,000 maybe for a client. if that client's going to take you a lot of time and your margins on that client are relatively low and you're the one doing all the fulfillment, it means that you can't actually earn a very good living if you have to pay a bunch of money for clients and you can only handle a small amount of clients. So let's talk about a few bottlenecks in that fulfillment category. So number one, variability. Project variability is a very big bottleneck for freelance project fulfillment. So when I say variability, what I mean is, does the project you're doing today look like the project you did a week ago, month ago, year ago? Maybe a year is a bit too long. But if every project you take on is different, if the way that you deliver a result is different, and if the kind of like business result you're delivering is different, it means that you never actually are getting ahead with your fulfillment. You're never creating systems and structures. The metaphor I like to use is like, are you paving a new trail when you're doing this project, or are you just walking down a trail that you already like paved with your little footprints? Paving a trail is inefficient. Walking down a trail you've been down 1,000 times is quite efficient. And that's the kind of thing you can delegate to a team member. It's the kind of thing you can automate with AI. It's the kind of thing you can create like templates and processes for. So that's going to be a really big bottleneck I see for fulfillment, is having every project be this different new work of art that I got to figure out. The way you solve this is through what's called productization. You find a valuable problem to solve, you solve it in a repeatable way, and ideally you solve it for a specific type of person. If you can dial into that, I learned Nicholas Cole has this concept called rule of ones. It's basically solve one problem for one type of person in one specific way. If you can dial those in, it means that your actual variability from project to project is going to be low, which is a superpower when it comes to delegation, automation, or just generally getting the most out of your time and earning as much as possible per hour. In sales, a lot of it's going to come down to offer for the bottlenecks. If you're trying to sell something commoditized that looks a lot like your competitors or that doesn't solve a very valuable problem, that's going to get in the way of your sales process. But beyond that, common bottlenecks often have to do with time spent and the scope of a sales call. I am bad about this. My sales calls are always like 1 hour. Everyone's different. I'm always digging into the business and stuff. And it would mean that if I tried to hire like a salesperson, it would be really, really hard because they don't know all the stuff about the business. And yet my sales calls are so driven by all of the Zach secret sauce. So having a standardized sales call process where you're almost like ticking off questions that frankly could have been in a gravity form or like a type form or whatever, that's kind of the way to solve that sales bottleneck, or introducing some pre-sales qualification. But it kind of depends if your sales problem is the time it's taking you or the closing percentages. If it's the time it's taking you, stuff I just said makes sense because it optimizes your time. If it's closing percentages, you might want to think about road mapping or micro engagements. These are basically ways for you to have a smaller project that costs less, where you can deliver a really big result and like basically kick a bunch of ass for the client, knock it out of the park, and then move on to the full engagement from there. That's a common sales bottleneck. But honestly, I think from what I've seen running the DYF community in my own business, that kind of thing, sales isn't typically the bottleneck for freelancers. I think sales only really becomes the bottleneck as you're scaling into like an agency where you're doing a lot of volume. I'm betting for you, your bottleneck is either going to be lead gen or fulfillment. Generally the way every freelance business goes is that their first bottleneck is lead gen, and then they like figure out lead gen, and now they have all these leads and they can't keep up with the work. So ask yourself, are you starving and wish you had more work? Or do you have a bunch of work and you're having trouble getting out the door? Or are you in that fun place where you have both problems, where you have a bunch of underpaid work and you don't feel like you have enough leads? If that's the case, solve the lead gen bottlenecks first to get higher paying clients. If you can get a surplus of leads, you can start charging more to counteract that demand. And then with this higher rate, you can take on less projects and you can basically work to reduce your variability of projects and increase your lead flow and just gradually iterate. But remember, the offer is one of the biggest things that's going to affect your success. I notice that most people, when they want more leads, they say, oh, I need to do cold outreach, I need to Upwork. And they skip the offer because it's like invisible. It's this invisible augmenter that affects your results without you actually knowing that it was because of that. So I would recommend that you make sure your offer's dialed in. We have a free course to help with it. If you go to dyf.link/pricing course, I think that's what it is. Just one word, small pricing course. That's our free charge what you're worth course that walks you through basically how you can improve your offer, sell more, interest more people who you're talking to in it, and give you a really strong foundation for solving these other bottlenecks from today. So if you enjoyed this, I'd love if you comment below with what you think your biggest bottleneck is right now, even if it's one I didn't speak to. And if it is one I didn't speak to, maybe I'll make a video about getting past that bottleneck. So thanks for being here. Subscribe if you want more stuff like this, and see you in the next one.